Section 1 of the Perfumed Garden by Sheikh Nafzawi. Translated by Richard Burton. This librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Ali Makki. Concerning praiseworthy men. Learn, O Vizier, God's blessing be upon you, that there are different sorts of men and women, that amongst these are those who are worthy of praise, and those who deserve reproach. When a meritorious man finds himself near to woman, his member grows, gets strong, vigorous, and hard. He is not quick to discharge, and after the trembling caused by the emission of sperm, he is soon stiff again. Such a man is liked and appreciated by women. This is because the woman loves the man only for the sake of coition. His member should, therefore, be of ample dimension and length. Such a man ought to be broad in the chest and heavy in the crupper. He should know how to regulate his emission, and be ready as to erection. His member should reach to the end of the canal of the female, and completely fill the same in all its parts. Such an one will be well beloved by women, for as the poet says, I have seen women trying to find in young men the durable qualities which grace the man of full power, the beauty, the enjoyment, the reserve, the strength, the full-formed member providing a lengthened coition, a heavy crupper, a slowly coming emission, a lightsome chest, as it were floating upon them, the spermal ejaculation slow to arrive, so as to furnish forth a long drawn-out enjoyment, his member soon to be prone again for erection, to ply the plane again and again and again on their vulvas. Such is the man whose cult gives pleasure to women, and who will ever stand high in their esteem. Qualities which women are looking for in men. The tale goes that on a certain day Abdul Malik bin Marwan sent to see Layla, his mistress, and put various questions to her. Amongst other things, he asked her what were the qualities which women looked for in men. Layla answered him, O my master, they must have cheeks like ours. And what besides? said bin Marwan. She continued, and hairs like ours. Finally, they should be like to you, O Prince of Believers, for surely, if a man is not strong and rich, he will obtain nothing from women. Various lengths of the virile member. The virile member, to please women, must have at most a length of the breadth of 12 fingers, or 3 hand-breadths, and at least 6 fingers, or a hand and a half breadth. There are men with members of 12 fingers, or 3 hand-breadths, others of 10 fingers, or 2½ hands, and others measure 8 fingers, or 2 hands. A man whose member is of less dimensions cannot please women. The use of perfumes in coition, and the history of Musaylima. The use of perfumes, by man as well as by woman, excites to the act of copulation. The woman, inhaling the perfumes employed by the man, becomes intoxicated, and the use of scents has often proved a strong help to man, and assisted him in getting possession of woman. On this subject it is told of Musaylima the impostor, the son of Qais, whom God may curse, that he pretended to have the gift of prophecy, and imitated the Prophet of God, blessings and salutations to him, for which reasons he and a great number of Arabs have incurred the ire of the Almighty. Musaylima, the son of Qais, the impostor, misconstrued likewise the Quran by his lies and impostures, and on the subject of a chapter of the Quran, which the angel Gabriel, hail be to him, had brought to the Prophet, the mercy of God and hail to him, people of bad faith had gone to see Musaylima, who had told them, to me also the angel Gabriel brought a similar chapter. He derided the chapter headed The Elephant, saying, in this chapter of the elephant I see the elephant. What is the elephant? What does it mean? What is this quadruped? It has a tail and a long trunk. Surely it is a creation of our God the Magnificent. The chapter of the Quran named the Kawthar was also an object of controversy. He said, we have given you precious stones for yourself, and preferences to any other man, but take care not to be proud of them. Musaylima thus perverted sundry chapters in the Quran by his lies and his impostures. He had been at his work when he heard the Prophet, the salutation and mercy of God be with him, spoken of. He heard that, after he had placed his venerable hands upon a bald head, the hair had forthwith sprung up again, that when he spat into a pit, the water came in abundantly, and that the dirty water turned at once clean and good for drinking, that when he spat into an eye that was blind or obscure, the sight was at once restored to it, And when he placed his hands upon the head of a child, saying, "Live for a century," the child lived to be 100 years old. When the disciples of Musaylima saw these things, or heard speak of them, they came to him and said, "Have you no knowledge of Muhammad and his doings?" He replied, "I shall do better than that." Now Musaylima was an enemy of God, and when he put his luckless hand on the head of someone who had not much hair, the man was at once quite bald. When he spat into a well with scanty supply of water, sweet as it was turned dirty by the will of God. When he spat into a suffering eye, that eye lost its sight at once. And when he laid his hand upon the head of an infant, saying, "Live 100 years," the infant died within an hour. Observe, my brethren, that what happens to those whose eyes remain closed to the light, and who are deprived by the assistance of the Almighty. And thus acted that woman of the Banu Tamim, called Khadija Tamimiyya, who pretended to be a prophetess. She had heard of Musaylima, and he likewise of her. This woman was powerful, for the Bani Tamim form a numerous tribe. She said, "Prophecy cannot belong to two persons. Either he is a prophet, and then I and my disciples will follow his laws, or I am a prophetess, and then he and his disciples will follow my laws." This happened after the death of the Prophet, the salutation and mercy of God be with him. Khadija then wrote to Musaylima a letter, in which she told him, "It is not proper that two persons should at once and the same time profess prophecy. It is for only one to be a prophet. We will meet, we and our disciples, and examine each other. We shall discuss about that which has come to us from God, or the Quran, and we will follow the laws of him who shall be acknowledged as the true Prophet." She then closed her letter, and gave it to a messenger, saying to him, "Betake yourself with this missive to Yamama, and give it to Musaylima bin Qais. As for myself, I'll follow you with the army." The next day the prophetess mounted horse with her qawm, and followed the spoor of her envoy. When the latter arrived at Musaylima's place, he greeted him and gave him the letter. Musaylima opened and read it, and understood its contents. He was dismayed, and began to advise with people of his qawm, one after another, but he did not see anything in their advice or in their views that could rid him of his embarrassment. While he was in this perplexity, one of the superior men of his qawm came forward and said to him, "O Musaylima, calm your soul and cool your eye. I will give you the advice of a father to his son." Musaylima said to him, "Speak, and may thy words be true." And the other one said, "Tomorrow morning erect outside the city a tent of coloured brocades, provided with silk furniture of all sorts. Fill the tent afterwards with a variety of different perfumes, amber, musk, and all sorts of scents, such as rose, orange flowers, jonquils, jasmine, hyacinth, carnation, and other plants. This done, have them place there several gold censers filled with green alloys, ambergris, net, and so on. Then fix the hangings so that nothing of these perfumes can escape out of the tent. Then, when you find the vapour strong enough to impregnate water, sit down on your throne, and send for the prophetess to come and see you in the tent, where she will be alone with you. When you are thus together, and she inhales the perfumes, she will delight in the same. All her bones will be released in a soft repose, and finally she will be swooning. When you see her thus far gone, ask her to grant you her favours. She will not hesitate to accord them. Having once possessed her, you will be freed of the embarrassment caused to you by her and her qawm." Musaylima exclaimed, "You have spoken well. As God gives, your advice is good and well thought out." And he had everything arranged accordingly. When he saw that the perfumed vapour was dense enough to impregnate the water in the tent, he sat down upon his throne and sent for the prophetess. On her arrival, he gave orders to admit her into the tent. She entered and remained alone with him. He engaged her in conversation. When Musaylima spoke to her, she lost all her presence of mind, and became embarrassed and confused. When he saw her in that state, he knew that she desired cohabitation, and he said, "Come, rise and let me have possession of you. This place has been prepared for that purpose. If you like, you may lie on your back, or you can place yourself on fours, or kneel as in prayer, with your brow touching the ground and your crupper in the air, forming a tripod, whichever position you prefer. Speak, and you shall be satisfied." The prophetess answered, I want it done in all ways. Let the revelation of God descend upon me, O Prophet of the Almighty. He at once precipitated himself upon her, and enjoyed her as he liked. She then said to him, When I am gone from here, ask my qawm to give me to you in marriage. When she had left the tent and met her disciples, they said to her, What is the result of the conference, O Prophetess of God? And she replied, Musaylimah has shown me what has been revealed to him, and I found it to be the truth, so obey him. Then Musaylimah asked her in marriage from the qawm, which was accorded to him. When the qawm asked about the marriage dowry for his future wife, he told them, I dispense you from saying the prayer Asr, which is said at 3 or 4 o'clock. Ever from that time the Bani Tamim do not pray at that hour, and when they ask the reason, they answer, It is on the account of our prophetess. She only knows the way to the truth. And in fact they recognize no other prophet. On this subject a poet has said, For us a female prophet has arisen. Her laws we follow. For the rest of mankind, the prophets that appeared were always men. The death of Musaylimah was foretold by the prophecy of Abu Bakr, to whom God be good. He was in fact killed by Zayd bin Khattab. Other people say it was done by Wahshi, one of his disciples. God only knows whether it was Wahshi. He himself says on this point, I have killed in my ignorance the best of men, Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib, and then I killed the worst of men, Musaylimah. I hope that God will pardon one of these actions in consideration of the other. The meaning of these words, I have killed the best of men, is that Wahshi, before having yet known the Prophet, had killed Hamza, to whom God be good, and having afterwards embraced Islam, he killed Musaylimah. In regards of Khadijah at-Tamimi, she repented by God's grace and took the Islamitic faith. She married one of the Prophet's followers. God be good to her husband. Thus finishes the story. The man who deserves favors is, in the eyes of women, the one who is anxious to please them. He must be of good presence, excel in beauty those around him, be of good shape and well-formed proportions, true and sincere in his speech with women. He must likewise be generous and brave, not vainglorious, and pleasant in conversation. A slave to his promise, he must always keep his word, ever speak the truth, and do what he has said. The man who boasts of his relations with women, of their acquaintances and good will to him, is a dastard. He will be spoken of in the next chapter. There is a story that once there lived a king named Ma'mun, who had a court full the name of Bahlul, who amused the princes and viziers. One day this buffoon appeared before the king, who was amusing himself. The king bade him to sit down, and then asked him, turning away, Why hast thou come, O son of bad woman? Bahlul answered, I have come to see what has come to our Lord, whom may God make victorious. And what has come to thee? replied the king. And how art thou getting on with thy new and with thy old wife? For Bahlul, not content with one wife, had married a second one. I am not happy, he answered, neither with the old one nor with the new, and moreover poverty overpowers me. The king said, Can you recite any verses on this subject? The buffoon having answered in the affirmative, Ma'mun commanded him to recite those he knew, and Bahlul began as follows. Poverty holds me in chains, misery torments me. I am scourged with all misfortunes. Ill luck has cast me in trouble and peril, and has drawn upon me the contempt of man. God does not favor a poverty like mine, that is opprobrious in everyone's eyes. Misfortune and misery for a long time have held me tightly, and no doubt of it. My dwelling house will soon not know me more. Ma'mun said to him, Where are you going to? He replied, To God and his Prophet, O Prince of the Believers. That is well, said the king. Those who take refuge in God and his Prophet, and then in us, will be made welcome. But can you now tell me some more verses about your two wives, and about what comes to pass with them? Certainly, said Bahlul. Then let us hear what you have to say. Bahlul then began thus with poetical words. By reason of my ignorance I have married two wives. And why do you complain, O husband of two wives? I said to myself, I shall be like a lamb between them. I shall take my pleasure upon the bosoms of my two sheep. And I have become like a ram between two female jackals. Days follow upon days, and nights upon nights, and their yoke bears me down during both days and nights. If I am kind to one, the other gets vexed, and I cannot escape from these two furies. If you want to live well and with a free heart, and with your hands unclenched, then do not marry. If you must wed, then marry one wife only. One alone is enough to satisfy two armies. When Ma'mun heard these words, he began to laugh till he nearly tumbled over. Then, as a proof of his kindness, he gave to Bahlul his golden robe, a most beautiful vestment. Bahlul went in high spirits to the dwelling of the Grand Vizier. Just as then, Hamduna looked from the height of her palace in that direction, and saw him. She said to her negress, "By the god of the temple of Mecca, there is Bahlul dressed in a fine gold-work thobe. How can I manage to get possession of the same?" The negress said, "Oh, my mistress, you would not know how to get hold of that robe." Hamduna answered, "I have thought of a trick whereby to achieve my ends. I shall get the robe from him." "Bahlul is a sly man," replied the negress. "People think generally that they can make fun of him, but for God, it is he who really makes fun of them. Give up the idea, mistress mine, and take care that you do not fall into the snare which you intend setting for him." But Hamduna said again, "It must be done." She then sent her negress to Bahlul to tell him that he should come to her. He said, "By blessing of God, to him who calls you, you shall make answer," and went to Hamduna. Hamduna welcomed him and said, "O Bahlul, I believe you come to hear me sing." He replied, "Most certainly, O my mistress, you have a marvelous gift for singing. I also think that after having listened to my songs, you will be pleased to take some refreshments." "Yes," he said. Then she began to sing admirably, so as to make people who listened die with love. After Bahlul had heard her sing, refreshments were served. He ate and he drank. Then she said to him, "I do not know why, but I fancy you would gladly take off your robe and make me a present of it." And Bahlul answered, "O my mistress, I have sworn to give it to her to whom I have done as a man does to a woman." "Do you know what that is, Bahlul?" said she. "Do I know it?" replied he. "I, who am instructing God's creatures in that science. It is I who make them copulate in love, who initiate them in the delights a female can give, show them how one must caress a woman, and what will excite and satisfy her. O my mistress, who should know the art of coition if it is not I?" Hamduna was the daughter of the Ma'mum, and the wife of the Grand Vizier. She was endowed with the most perfect beauty, of a superb figure and harmonious form. No one in her time surpassed her in grace and perfection. Heroes, on seeing her, became humble and submissive, and looked down to the ground for fear of temptation. So many charms and perfections had God lavished on her. Those who looked steadily at her were troubled in their mind, and oh, how many heroes imperiled themselves for her sake! For this very reason, Bahlul had always avoided meeting her for fear of succumbing to the temptation, and apprehensive for his peace of mind, he never until then been in her presence. Bahlul began to converse with her. Now he looked at her, and anon bent his eyes to the ground, fearful of not being able to command his passion. Hamduna burnt a desire to have the robe, and he would not give it up without king paid for it. "What price do you demand?" she asked. To which he replied, "Coition, apple of my eye." "You know what that is, O Bahlul?" she said. "By God," he cried, "no man knows women better than I. They are the occupation of my life. No one has studied all their concerns more than I. I know what they are fond of. For learn, O lady mine, that men choose different occupations according to their genius and their bent. The one takes, the other gives; this one sells, the other buys. My only thought is of love, and of the possession of beautiful women. I heal those that are lovesick, and carry a solace to their thirsting vaginas." Hamduna was surprised at his words and the sweetness of his language. "Could you recite me some verses on this subject?" she asked. "Certainly," he answered. "Very well, Bahlul, let me hear what you have to say." Bahlul recited as follows: "Men are divided according to their affairs and doings. Some are always in spirits and joyful, others in tears. There are those whose life is restless and full of misery, while, on the contrary, others are steeped in good fortune, always in luck's happy way, and favoured in all things. I alone am indifferent to all such matters. What care I for Turkmans, Persians, and Arabs? My whole ambition is in love and coition with women. No doubt nor mistake about that. If my member is without vulva, my state becomes frightful. My heart then burns with a fire which cannot be quenched. Look at my member erect. There it is, admire its beauty. It calms the heat of love and quenches the hottest fires by its movement in and out between your thighs. O my hope and my apple, O noble and generous lady! If no one will not suffice to appease thy fire, I shall do it again, so as to give satisfaction. No one may reproach thee, for all the world does the same. But if you choose to deny me, then send me away. Chase me away from thy presence without any fear or remorse. Yet bethink thee, and speak and augment not my trouble. But in the name of God forgive me, and do not reproach me. While I am here, let thy words be kind and forgiving. Let them not fall upon me like sword blades, keen and cuffing. Let me come to you, and do not repel me. Let me come to you like one that brings drink to the thirsty. Hasten and let my hungry eyes look at thy bosom. Do not withhold from me love's joys, and do not be bashful. Give yourself up to me. I shall never cause you trouble. Even were you to fill me with sickness from head to foot, I shall always remain as I am, and you as you are, knowing that I am the servant and you are the mistress ever. Then shall our love be veiled? It shall be hidden for all time, for I keep it a secret, and I shall be mute and muzzled. It is by God's will that everything happens, and He has filled me with love, but today my luck is ill. While Hamduna was listening, she nearly swooned, and set herself to examine the member of Bahlul, which stood erect like a column between his thighs. Now she said to herself, I shall give myself up to him, and now, no, I will not. During this uncertainty, she felt a yearning for pleasure deep within her parts privy, and Iblis made flow from her natural parts a moisture, the forerunner of pleasure. She then no longer combated her desire to cohabit with him, and reassured herself by the thought, if this Bahlul, after having had his pleasure with mine, should divulge it, no one will believe his words. She requested him to divest himself of his robe and to come into her room, but Bahlul replied, I shall not undress till I have sated my desire, O apple of my eye. Then Hamduna rose, trembling with excitement for what was to follow. She undid her girdle and left the room, Bahlul following her and thinking, am I really awake, or is this a dream? He walked after her till she had entered her boudoir. Then she threw herself on a couch of silk, which was rounded up on the top like a vault, lifted her clothes up over her thighs, trembling all over, and all the beauty which God had given her was in Bahlul's arms. Bahlul examined the belly of Hamduna. Round like an elegant cupola, his eyes dwelt upon a navel which was like a pearl in a golden cup. And descending lower down, there was a beautiful piece of nature's workmanship, and the whiteness and shape of her thighs surprised him. Then he pressed Hamduna in a passionate embrace, and soon saw the animation leave her face. She seemed almost unconscious. She had lost her head, and holding Bahlul's member in her hands, excited and fired him more and more. Bahlul said to her, why do I see you so troubled and beside yourself? And she answered, leave me, O son of debauched woman! By God, I am like a mare in heat, and you continue to excite me still more with your words. And what words! They would set any woman on fire if she was the purest creature in the world. You will insist in making me succumb by your talk and your verses. Bahlul answered, am I then not like your husband? Yes, she said. But a woman gets heat on account of the man, as a mare on account of the horse, whether the man be the husband or not. With this difference, however, that the mare gets lusty only at certain periods of the year, and only then receives a stallion, while a woman can always be made rampant by words of love. Both these dispositions have met within me, and as my husband is absent, make haste, for he will soon be back. Bahlul replied, O my mistress, my loins hurt me and prevent me mounting upon you. You take the man's position, and then take my robe, and let me depart. Then he laid himself down in the position the woman takes in receiving a man, and his verge was standing up like a column. Hamduna threw herself upon Bahlul, took his member between her hands, and began to look at it. She was astonished at its size, strength, and firmness, and cried, "Here we have the ruin of all women, and the cause of many troubles. O Bahlul, I never saw a more beautiful dart than yours." Still she continued keeping hold of it, and rubbed its beads against the lips of her vulva, till the latter part seemed to say, "O member, come into me." Then Bahlul inserted his member into the vagina of the Sultan's daughter, and she, settling down upon his engine, allowed it to penetrate entirely into her furnace till nothing more could be seen of it, not the slightest trace. And she said, "How lascivious has God made woman, and how indefatigable after her pleasures!" She then gave herself up to an up and down dance, moving her bottom like a riddle, to the right and left, and forward and backward. Never was there such a dance as this. The Sultan's daughter continued her ride upon Bahlul's member till the moment of enjoyment arrived, and the attraction of the vulva seemed to pump the member as though by suction, just as an infant sucks the teat of the mother. The acme of enjoyment came to both simultaneously, and each took the pleasure with avidity. Then Hamduna seized the member in order to withdraw it, and slowly, slowly she made it come out, saying, "This is the deed of a vigorous man." Then she dried it and her own private parts with a silken kerchief, and rose. Bahlul also got up and prepared to depart, but she said, "And the robe?" He answered, "Why, mistress, you have been riding me and still want a present." "But," she said, "did you not tell me that you could not mount me on account of the pains in your loins?" "It matters but little," said Bahlul. "The first time it was your turn, the second time will be mine, and the price for it will be the robe, and then I will go." Hamduna thought of herself, "As he began, he may now go on, afterwards he will go away." So she laid herself down, but Bahlul said, "I shall not lie with you unless you undress entirely." Then she undressed until she was quite naked, and Bahlul fell into an ecstasy on seeing the beauty and perfection of her form. He looked at her magnificent thighs and rebounding navel, at her belly vaulted like an arch, her plump breasts standing like hyacinths. Her neck was like a gazelle's, the opening of her mouth like a ring, her lips fresh and red like a gory sabre. Her teeth might have been taken for pearls, and her cheeks for roses. Her eyes were black and well slit, and her eyebrows of ebony resembled the rounded flourish of the noun traced by the hand of a skilful writer. Her forehead was the full moon in the night. Bahlul began to embrace her, to suck her lips and to kiss her bosom. He drew her fresh saliva and bit her thighs. So he went on till she was ready to swoon, and could scarcely stammer, and her eyes became veiled. Then he kissed her vulva, and she moved neither hand nor foot. He looked lovingly upon the secret parts of Hamduna, beautiful enough to attract all eyes with their purple centre. Bahlul cried, "Oh, the temptation of man!" And still he bit her and kissed her till her desire was roused to its full pitch. Her sighs became quicker, and grasping his member with her hand, she made it disappear in her vagina. Then it was he who moved hard, and she who responded hotly, the overwhelming pleasure simultaneously calming their fervour. Then Bahlul got off her, dried his pestle and her mortar, and prepared to retire. But Hamduna said, "Where is the robe? You mock me, O Bahlul." He answered, "O my mistress, I shall only part with it for a consideration. You have had your dues, and I mine. The first time was for you, the second time for me, now the third time shall be for the robe." This said, he took it off, folded it, and put it in Hamduna's hands, who, having risen, lay down again on the couch, and said, "Do what you like." Forthwith Bahlul threw himself upon her, and with one push completely buried his member in her vagina. Then he began to work as with a pestle, and she to move her bottom, until both again did flow over at the same time. Then he rose from her side, left his robe, and went. The negress said to Hamduna, "O mistress, is it not as I have told you? Bahlul is a bad man, and you could not get the better of him. They consider him as a subject of mockery, but before God he is making fun of them. Why would you not believe me?" Hamduna turned to her and said, "Do not tire me of your remarks. It came to pass what has to come to pass, and on the opening of each vulva is inscribed the name of the man who is to enter it, right or wrong, for love or for hate. If Bahlul's name had not been inscribed in my vulva, he would never have got into it, had he offered me the universe with all it contains." As they were thus talking, there came a knock at the door. The negress asked who was there, and in answer the voice of Bahlul said, "It is I." Hamduna, in doubt as to what the buffoon wanted to do, got frightened. The negress asked Bahlul what he wanted, and received the reply, "Bring me my little water." She went out of the house with a cup of full water. Bahlul drank, and then let the cup slip out of his hand, and it was broken. The negress shut the door upon Bahlul, who sat himself down on the threshold. The buffoon being thus close to the door, the vizier, Hamduna's husband, arrived, who said to him, "Why do I see you here, Bahlul?" And he answered, "O my lord, I was passing through the street when I was overcome by a great thirst. A negress came and brought me a cup of water. Then the cup slipped from my hands and got broken. Then our lady Hamduna took my robe, which the Sultan our master had given me as indemnification." Then said the vizier, "Let me have his robe." Hamduna at this moment came out, and her husband asked her whether it was true that she had taken the robe in payment for the cup. Hamduna then cried, beating her hands together, "What have you done, O Bahlul?" He said, "I have talked to your husband the language of my folly. Talk to him, you, the language of thy wisdom." And she, enraptured with the cunning he had displayed, gave him back his robe, and he departed. End of Section 1.